Tonight on Broadcast Now, we've got a special episode for you. We've got John Henkel. He is the product marketing manager of Netgear, and we're going to talk all about NDI and Netgear's NDI resources for net switches, giving you the ability to have the best network experience with NDI. All this when Broadcast Now starts now. Hey guys, it's time for some Broadcast Now. We've got a great show today, as you heard. Let's jump right into what we've got. Mr. Marty McFadden from podjam.tv. Welcome.
Stephen, how are you? This is a highlight of my week, always.
Oh, I know. You've been chomping at the bit for this show when you heard about this one.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great topic. Confusing to a lot of people, I think. Networking can get a little bit confusing and complicated, but I think we got the right guy here.
We brought on the expert. That's what we planned on doing. So we've also got Mr. Greg Terry, youtube.com/the Greg Terry Experience.
Hey, Stephen. Hello, Marty. And looking forward to the program tonight. It's going to be awesome. We've got some serious, legit horsepower, firepower queued up and ready to roll. And just talking pre-show, he's from out in the neck of the woods where I used to live in California. So looking forward to our hour together tonight. We're all going to be enlightened, learn something, might even have a smile or two during this time. Thanks, Steve.
Hey, I always try to smile with this, and we got our special guest, John Henkel from Netgear, and you are the product marketing manager, right?
I am. I handle the Pro AV section of Netgear. Netgear, of course, being a big, huge company, they brought me in about a year and a half ago to target the Pro AV side of things.
Well, I know it's great to have you with us tonight. We're excited. We've been watching everything because obviously NDI is really huge right now, right? We've been watching this. NDI 5 came out, and then you guys really took the industry by storm with coming out with, from what I've seen, the first dedicated NDI-based router or switches and system, right?
Yeah, we've been in the marketplace for a long time. Obviously, Netgear's been around, I think it's 25 years this year, as a matter of fact. And then in Pro AV, we started getting attention like 2016, I think, when the different series came out. The M4300 series switches came out. But we started changing things and realized there's a big market there and a few things we could do. But the real game changer is this newer M4250 series that we're kind of here to talk about, that you heard about with NDI 5 as well. So this series has just really gotten us some huge attention in the marketplace, and we're really excited about it.
And I know a lot of these guys, we've got ranges of pro audio guys, pro video guys, all the way down to the basic new guys that want to get into this, and they've heard us talk about NDI ad nauseum sometimes here because we love the technology. So I guess what I want to ask you, and these guys will probably jump in with some questions as well. I think to kick this off, what makes your switches stand out from, say, just an average switch? Like how does this really work with NDI to really give you the best signal possible?
Well, and I should say I'm an AV guy. I'm not a network guy, an IT person at all. And that some of the great part is I'm a good use case for our switches because I can't configure them the way it should be. So I need to make it simple. So that's the biggest thing for NDI or for SDVOE or for Crestron, for Kramer, whoever. we have profiles that have all the configuration built in. So we've taken the pain out of that. We've gotten their equipment in our place. We've had their equipment, our equipment at their place, and make sure that all the settings are tweaked correctly. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to figure out for multicast AV. It is not simple. IGMP has settings. You got to set the querier. You got to set blah, blah, blah. So we do all that for you. So now for NDI especially, that's where we got the buzz. You can pop in, turn the switch on, click NDI profile, NDI 5 with Dante Audio or NDI 4, select the ports and hit save, and it's all configured for you. That's the beauty of this new 4250 line of switches for us.
That's it.
It's easy.
Plug it in, just like
That's
a dummy switch.
Well, and sometimes it even on other protocols, it just works out of the box even. So because we've been doing networking for so long, there's tweaks we can make to make IGMP, which is the core multicasting protocol you need to have working on your switch. We've added some things to that to make it even easier and even better that it didn't do from the beginning. Like guaranteeing we're not going to flood your freaking network when